Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you to our press conference. My name is Hal Shurtleff. I am the director and co-founder of Camp Constitution, which is a charitable trust. And today we have two of the world's top climate realists here in this Nurses Hall at the State House in Boston, Massachusetts, on a very cold February 25 day. And it's supposed to be cold in February, isn't it? Camp Constitution, among other things, runs a week-long family camp. You can see our little poster here talking about our camp from July 28th to August 3rd. And Professor Willie Soon is one of our instructors. But what brings us here is that the narrative is that we must spend billions, if not trillions of dollars to address something called climate change, sea levels rising, and all kinds of other issues. And the mainstream press doesn't generally interview people who take a different view on the subject. And I think it's very important because bad science leads to bad policy and bad law. And states all over the country, and of course the United States Congress, will be debating on some of these horrendous bills like the Green New Deal. Here in Massachusetts, they're talking about a carbon tax and so forth and so on. So I'm just going to introduce our two speakers, a little bio, and then Willie Soon will come up first, and then Mr. DeLeo, and any questions afterwards. So Dr. Soon earned his bachelor's and master's degree in science and his Ph.D. in aerospace engineering from the University of Southern California. He was a speaker at the Heartland Institute's 9th International Conference on Climate Change, a gathering of many of the world's top climate scientists and researchers who challenged the IPCC's increasingly discredited claim that human activity is causing a global crisis that demands draconian global regulations under an increasingly powerful United Nations. That's a long sentence, isn't it? Born in Malaysia, Dr. Soon immigrated to the United States in 1980. In 2004, he received the Petr Beckmann Award for outstanding contributions to the defense of scientific truth. He's become a good friend of mine. He's a regular instructor at Camp Constitution. He's a great family man, and he's a proud naturalized U.S. citizen. And our second guest, and by the way, I met most of these gentlemen at the at the Heartland Institute's Climate Change Conference back in 2009 in New York City. And so Mr. Joe DeLeo was a co-founder and first director of meteorology at the cable TV Weather Channel. He has over 45 years experience in professional meteorology. Mr. DeLeo is now co-chief meteorologist with WeatherBell LLC. He was previously chief meteorologist at Weather Services International Corporation and the WSI. He was a partner and chief meteorologist at a hedge fund trading energy and agriculture before joining WeatherBell at its startup. So let's first introduce Professor Soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Hal. Well, thank you all for coming, and the first message that I want to give to everybody that is looking at this video is please contact us if you have questions, and if you want to use any or all of this slide, please contact us so we'll pass it on to you. The goal is that you can also carry on the message by yourself, because God only knows that we need so much more help because no one hears our message. These are all about truth, nothing but the truth. Okay? You can see from the title, this is actually trying to tell you that global warming is actually a hoax, a scam in some sense. Because scientifically, I've been researching this topic for 30 years. I'm not able to find anything about CO2 being dangerous at all. In fact, all we know is that CO2 is making the planet greener. It's actually make agriculture producing more food for us. This is actually something that is mostly wonderful in some sense. No wonder that we have a real contradiction in terms of this movement that is trying to do something like what they call the Green New Deal by this new congressman from New York, a bartender by the way. And indeed what they are proposing is highly dangerous. If it's not dangerous, I guess I wouldn't be bothered here today. I really have many things to do. And they say that, the world is going to end in 12 years. Can you imagine that? 12 years? I mean, excuse me, Congresswoman, I'm going to wait for 12 years and then what are you going to say about that after this? But the problem in this world is that they are just talk. They never look into the details. So what's in this Green New Deal? They basically want to outlaw so-called greenhouse gases. That just simply means water vapor and CO2. Can you imagine that? If you do that, according to my friend, which is Dr. Patrick Moore, the founder of Greenpeace, you are essentially trying to kill life. really eradication of all life, because the two most important greenhouse gases by far, of course, is water vapor. The next one will be CO2. If you outlaw both of them, guess what is going to happen, right? And then, in fact, this morning, people are talking about, maybe you should tell the crowd how much the Green New Deal is going to cost, right? I tell you, baloney. Don't even answer that question because it's stupid. It's very stupid, because the question to ask is that, how much would it cost for you to not have electricity and don't have gasoline to drive your car? This is the cost, the true cost of tragedy, of tragic proportion. And then the problem in this world is that people are very scientifically illiterate. You guys may not think that this is a joke. Domino Sugar is trying to sell you sugar that is actually carbon-free. I hope people get the joke, because sugar is nothing but carbon, okay? If you don't get that, I think you should really use the coal and hit on your own head, right? And this is why they have gone so far to say that climate change is nothing but equal in mathematical symbols, equal sign, equal to human extinction. This is the kind of a paradigm that they are proposing. And then we are at the Great State Hall, which is, by the way, extremely beautiful. My first visit here, I'm highly impressed. But what I'm not impressed is that kind of politician. This is a politician for convenience. I don't know if anybody know about this. 2 days after the major snowstorm last year, the major nor'easter, which broke all the records, this guy, the governor of Massachusetts, was proposing a way to try to tax you, trying to steal more money, basically. And guess what happened? There's no respect for reality. They probably trying to say that, the extra snowstorm and all this extra coal is all caused by global warming. I will explain to you that that's just impossible. I'm so sorry for them. So this is the record they broke last year, okay, in terms of snowfall. And then most recently, just January, this guy now, instead of stealing it from another form of tax, he's actually proposing what they call the excise tax on real estate transaction. This is the kind of stuff that they actually trying to steal money from you. It is a bit like, if you put it this way, if this CO2 is so dangerous, it's a bit like you're having a little headache. And then they say that instead of letting you see the doctors or take a Tylenol, you know what they say? First, we're going to chop off your right arm. Next, we're going to chop off your left arm. And probably like your leg needs to be gone too. I mean, this is what they're trying to do to you. It's just insane, by the way. And then the Massachusetts team, by this famous presidential candidate, Elizabeth Warren, of course, aka Pocahontas, is actually also jumped into this topic, announcing these Green New Deals that we all must subscribe to, okay? That we all must subscribe to during a very, very cold polar vortex about 2 weeks ago. In case they want to propose that this cold wave is caused by global warming, let me remind you the actual record from Boston. In February of 1849, you can easily see that it's documented that we have a major cold wave then. I hope you get the context, right? 1849, there's just no way that human CO2 is going to cause the problem. And then, in case we are wondering how much the global warming is going to damage the whole planet, and Boston in specific, the two curves, the red curve and the blue curve, are basically the temperature maximum and the temperature minimum, daily maximum in Boston. And then the global warming that they're proposing over 100 years is actually the thickness of that line. A few degree Fahrenheit. This is what they expect you to be worried about. I'm so sorry, they never want you to see graph. They say, you don't need to look at the graph. This is like the way Al Gore always pulled that stunt, you don't need to know too much. You just trust the scientists. The scientists are the best of the best. How many thousand scientists agree with this? And then another context about this global warming change that they're talking about. Again, remind you that they tell you that in another 100 years that we're going to get a warming about a few degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Look at what happened in the human body. This is the human body. So for women, because you have hormone controlling your body, the fluctuation is over 9 degrees. So I would say extreme global warming every day in your body. I'm so sorry. This is just something not to be concerned about. It's just a nonsense that they're pulling the stunt. And people don't get the context that these things are actually very insignificant, the nonsense that they're talking about. So I really want to tell Governor Baker, I'm very sorry, very bad timing. What you're doing here is very, very bad. I know your home is well heated, but many people don't have that kind of money to spare, okay? By the way, one number that came out from this Green New Deal is that it's going to cost every single one of us about $5,500 per year. You have that kind of money to spare? This is the way that they are trying to steal money from us. And then just to give you a perspective on how cold it is, Joe DeLeo was going to be able to tell you more about this event, of course. But this is what happened about a few weeks ago. That the coal, it's actually covering almost 84 million people, are all below freezing level. And then look at how cold it is. Minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, this is extreme cold. This is where the color, the pink and the purple line are showing you how cold it was, how intense it is. It was so cold that the major problem in Chicago was actually people robbing this, what they call the Canadian Goose coal. That cost about a few $100 to $1,000. There were 3-4 cases that Chicago police documented that this is the kind of problem. That's how cold it is. And then, of course, I want to introduce you to the so-called dumb energy. Dumb energy are those so-called solar and wind power. This is dumb because you know why? For 200 years, we, humanity, have been running away from this dumb energy, this so-called renewable. Okay, and then we actually found fossil fuel, we found nuclear, we found all this other good stuff that we can use. Now they're saying that we should go back to wind and solar, where there is just simply no technology, no reliability to provide us anything useful. So this is what happened during the cold polar vortex time. Up to 93% of the power is supplied by all this traditional coal, gas, hydro. I'm not for any of this energy, by the way. I'm just for whatever that's reliable, that's meaningful, and is not too expensive for everyone. These are all dumb because it costs so much energy, it could never ever supply us the amount of energy that we need to, okay, ever. And this is how cold it is in Chicago. The Amtrak are burning the track just to make sure to keep it warm so that it won't freeze. And then our great US government, obviously, you want to know, right, what was actually predicted? In October of this 2018, last year, they say that the January temperature is going to be all above average. It's going to be warm. Look at all the red zone that they're talking about. You know, don't you think that we should request for a refund? I mean, these people are not only not doing their job, they're putting out an alarm that is just completely out of this world, okay? No wonder that there's a very great the largest candy store owner in Minnesota is putting up this sign to say that thank God for the President Trump, actually. That he actually kind of fixed solar global warming in 2 years. And this is only for you to try to tell you that your mind can actually do a lot of tricks to you, actually. It's something related to some receptor in your eyes, actually. That if you look at it more than 10 seconds or 15 seconds, you will get dizzy out of it because you see motion. And here's a big, extreme danger now. These people are not trying to talk about something like I hear this reporter say, oh, it's going to be only 9 inches in another 100 years. These guys are talking about 170 feet of water in Boston, Massachusetts. Here's a cartoon. It's just out of this world. These people are just not even humble about these things. All they are trying to do is to put out the most scary thing you can find, and then you pay up, or else you're going to die. Well, here's the fact. The fact is that Boston Harbor does keep a very good sea level record. You can see there are data going up and down, up and down, up and down, actually. But for the last 12 years, let's check the number. Number is very important in science, by the way. It's only 1.5 inches on 12 years, okay? You can calculate that, 10 times later, it's not going to be that much, right? It's a very small amount. And we really need to understand how much is this thing changing. Here's another computer program. They are so used to this nonsense. They're talking about 16 feet, they're talking about 40 feet in another 300 years. These are the kind of what you call voodoo science, actually. I'm sorry that these people are not even close to doing anything scientific. This is how sad this whole business is. And then they will invoke something like the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. By the way, they are the one that issued the report that said that we have only 12 years left to try to put the temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius change. And that is actually, if you want to know magic trick, that is exactly what magic is. Magic doesn't exist in science. These people are so bad. And so the question is, can you trust the climate model? It's very simple, just one chart to show you. This is just a very simple observation. You just measure a radar, how much the radar reflect based on the amount of ice and water inside the cloud structure. These are any models that you care to choose. I don't think you would have any confidence in this climate model that they are using. These are the kind of people who essentially belongs to this class of what extremists, I would say. I don't care his Nobel Prize, by the way. This guy named Paul Krugman from New York Times, obviously. Look at what he predicted, right? By 2050, it is very clear the internet impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machine. Anybody is still using fax machine this day? I mean, these people are never wrong. That's the whole idea. The whole idea is that they've been putting out scare, like Y2K, whatever. Any amount of scare that you want, species extinction, world hunger, every single one of them can be actually solved by being just rational and not going crazy, actually. Not being extreme. And then really understand what the data say. By the way, if it's really dangerous, I'm going to tell you right now, we've got to do something about it. I don't need the governor to tell me this, that, and text people for no reason. Now I want to tell you another quick thing before I end up. I probably run out of time, but just want to tell you this sea level scare story. They are really going very, very extreme now because they are all about propaganda. They are all about selling this package kind of information that is just all nothing but untruth and total lies, actually. This is the kind of thing. Here, Boston, you like the picture? It's kind of scary, isn't it? It's all computer. It's all not real stuff. So they come up with this group now called First Street Foundation. By the way, they're extremely well funded. I got this from Hal, who actually, well, Hal, you cost me another 2 days of studying this thing. They say that it's rising sea level already an impact on our planet, on our Boston area. So Boston in Massachusetts, it costs us about $275 million for the last 12 years. That is a very funny budgeting business, okay? So usually they will do something like this. They will provide a map. Look like, oh, it's scary, downtown Boston, in Salisbury, all these different areas, which avenue, oh, it's all water running all over the place. And then they give you some numbers, so scary. And then they even give you, oh, please look up our internet. We are so useful. We even try to help you. You can look up the internet, just click where you live, and then you will be able to do that. This is actually insurance scam and all kinds of scam that they're providing. What you need to ask is that how good is those data? Who is these people that's doing this? I have to tell you, they are all propaganda people. They are really, really funded by big money from guys like Tom Steyer and all these other people. They are really not in the least of our own interest in terms of normal people who actually have no money. One of the guys that did this, I looked into this because I was very curious. Who is this guy that's so smart that can produce all this nonsense map, okay? His name is Steve McAlpine. Please, can we study his credibility? Here's what I found. The guy is a young little, what you call millennial, whatever the people that's young, right? And have only published one paper so far, and have only one citation in life. Jesus, I'm sorry, excuse the language. These people are truly, truly bad and unqualified to give you any advice. So can you see the problem in this sort of thing? These people are packaging information like CNN is doing, okay? It's just scary, right? Just go into some puddle and then make sure that it looks like it's so scary. So, one question for this kind of people who keep selling this kind of colorful map. In fact, I always say that my daughter can do even better coloring than these people. It's just nuts, these people. So here's a tight gauge station in Boston. And then you look at the value. The actual value of the last 12 years is actually only 1 inch. The changing of the sea level is only 1 inch or 26 millimeter. By the way, so you can ask, can you really 1 inch of this thing cost $273 million losses? It's impossible. Just think about it. If you want a context, what does 1 millimeter mean, what 2 millimeter mean, and 5 millimeter mean? Here's what it is. That's the size of 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 5 millimeter. That's how small it is. By the way, you ask yourself, you all use GPS every day, right? You want to know how accurate is GPS? It's no more than 10 feet, okay? These people, so tell me, how is it that you're going to measure the ocean down to that level? And these people are talking about that amount of change. And just to remind you what real world is doing, every single day, we got in Boston Harbor, this is the 12 feet or 144 inches in the day of the tidal changes of the sea level. And these people tell you that we should be concerned about a few inches in 100 years. In fact, there's a comedian who says that actually, if the sea level is going to change by this how many inches per 100 years and you don't know how to step back, you deserve to die. And then, here's the story, right? These people are going more and more nuts. This guy is definitely going to die actually. If he were to be bold enough to stay. He tied himself on the tide gauge, on the places to say that he worried about sea level by 1 foot. These are nuts stuff. And finally, just to tell you that this Green New Deal is truly something that is very, very, it's nothing but just disaster and cost. Remember, all those costs that they're talking about is just immeasurable. It's just too high. And they say that we're killing the planet. That's just impossible. You can kill you can say all the words you want. The planet will be fine, okay? And finally, one last chart. Just remember this chart. This is my own bread and butter. In my professional work, I study how the sun is affecting the Earth climate system. And what I'm plotting for you is that the temperature of the United States, but not taking any of the station that is in an urban area like Boston. We take somewhere in the outskirts. So we take the rural US temperature, and then we try to ask ourselves, how does it change? It seems to go up, and then in the 30s and 40s, 50s, it goes down, and then it go up again. And then when you try to ask yourself, who can cause this change? Actually, if you were to put down the solar curve, the sun curve, it actually really explains very well what the temperature record is doing. So just remember that it is the sun stupid, really. Okay, I'm done. Thank you. Bye-bye. Go next.
Thank you all for coming.
You have a tough act to follow.
How I do.
So I hope you know how to tap dance, because I know you probably aren't as funny as he is.
Okay, do
You ready to go and advance?
and then you just advance this arrow up and down.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about global warming. There's also climate change, and it involved also the climate disruption. But as Willie has frequently said, and many of you obviously know, the only constant in nature is change.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, I'll get closer. Willie talked about carbon dioxide. Now, it's perfectly reasonable to be green-minded and work toward conservation of resources and clean air and water like I have done all my life. But CO2 is a trace gas, and not a pollution, but a pollutant, but a beneficial gas. It's plant food. It makes plants more vigorous and drought-resistant, and has helped greatly increase crop yields and feed the population of the world. Thanks to increased CO2, rice and wheat have increased threefold in their yields, and corn and bean almost fivefold. And they pump CO2 into greenhouses. I like to ask the audience often, how much CO2, what percentage of the atmosphere is CO2? And people will say 20%, 10%. It's 0.04%. And when we breathe in air, we breathe in air at 4 to 10 parts per million. We breathe out 40,000 parts per million. So if you want to slow CO2 production, stop breathing. See what happens with more CO2. In an experiment, when they double the CO2, the growth of the vegetation doubles. It has caused the greening of the earth. There's a NASA chart that shows that vegetation has increased threefold in 50 years with only 10% more land involved, while the world population has doubled. Now they claim that 1 or 2 degrees more will wipe out our corn and bean crops, 60%. They gotta be kidding. Corn and bean crops have been, yields have been rising steadily. We've set record corn yields 3 of the last 4 years. Paul Ehrlich in the 1970s had said in the book Population Bomb that it was over for the world. We were going to run out of resources. There'd be no more energy. That the food crop would not be sufficient for the population. But see what's happened since the 1970s. It's been steady up. And by the way, in the corn and growing areas, temperatures have not gone up. They've gone down a little bit, maximum temperatures. Nighttime temperatures are elevated because of the moisture from irrigation and plants. But daytime temperatures are down. That's perfect for plants, and that's why we're getting record yields. Okay, then it's carbon pollution that they switch to. But that's not carbon dioxide. It's not a pollutant because we breathe out 100 times more carbon dioxide than we breathe in. It's particulate matter. So at one time in coal plants, and when I grew up in New York City, in incinerators, they throw off carbon soot, and you'd have to brush off carbon soot from your car in the morning, like we do today with pollen. And it was unhealthful. And in certain situations when there were inversions in North Pennsylvania, London, in England, major events with fog and inversions that trapped the pollutants and killed people. But we cleaned up our act. Now you remember this ad from the American Lung Association with a child in a carriage coughing, and they were paid $4 million to run that ad. But we have cleaned up our air. This is 2.5 micron particulate matter chart. We set standards, we beat the standards. We're well below the goals set then. We have air quality days way down, even in California. A 41% decrease in the national average. Okay, greenhouse models. Willie showed a few examples. These are 4 sample greenhouse models, and each of those little boxes at the top demonstrates what the temperatures are supposed to be in the atmosphere, with on the left of each box the southern hemisphere, South Pole, and on the right the North Pole, and the equator in the middle. And then from the bottom to the top of the atmosphere. And notice the heat is supposed to be greatest in 20 to 30,000 feet over the equator. But over in that region, by the way, it's supposed to also be warm in the low levels in the Arctic and the Antarctic and the tropics. At the bottom is the Hadley temperature since 1979 in that box where it's supposed to be the greatest warming. There is no warming. It's flat. And the ocean temperatures beneath in the entire transit along the equator, from the Western Pacific to the South American coast, has been flat. It hasn't been warming there. Well, the climate models that build in climate, the greenhouse gases, all showed this tremendous warming that was supposed to take place. But the balloons and satellites and the reanalysis data sets show only 1/4, 25% of the warming that these climate models predict. There's one model that does show warming that matches the observations, and that's the Russian model. And they had a much lower greenhouse gas input, and they included the sun. They got it right. There was no warming for almost 19 years. When it was first said that we got to 10 years, they said, well, if it gets to 15, we may have to take a look at it. We went to 18. And they started looking at it. There was a paper published by Kevin Trenberth, our good friend, lead author of the IPCC, saying that, well, El Nino and ocean cycles can have a temporary effect on the climate. In the annual AMS meeting in 2015, they had 3 panels of people trying to address the pause. Not a single scientist that really knows climate or is on our side of the argument. But later in 2015, they made that pause go away with adjustments. Earth's temperature. It's not an easy job to take the Earth's temperature. And it hasn't been done as long as you would think. Most people believe that, we've been measuring the global temperature change, for decades. We've got data back to the 1800s. But really, one of the first attempts to look at the actual observations, many on paper, all around the world, was in 1975. The National Center for Atmospheric Research, this is the National Academy of Science, showed a great warming up to late 1930s and then a cooling. And it extended into the 1970s. It really showed a chart of that. This is the first U.S. attempt at a display of the actual temperatures for the U.S. stations, 1,200 approximately, going back to 1880. Actually, later in 1895 was the start point. And this was the version based on the 1880 and 1989 release of the U.S. data algorithms. This is a version around 2000, and it shows 1934 how warm it was, and then it cooled, and then it warmed again, and that was the super El Nino of 1990 you notice it was almost a degree, 9/10 of a degree colder than 1934. This was based, and in fact, the New York Times story said the new data shows that since 1895 there's been no warming. This was 1989 New York Times newspaper. And they said the study showed there was little change in temperature over that time. And the reason that it was done right is that they incorporated the urban heat island effect and adjusted for it. In the cities, vertical walls, steel and concrete absorb the sun's heat, slow to cool at night. Most of the world is urbanized. Cities grow around airports where we measure temperature. There's London in the top right. There's the London heat island. Temperatures are 10 degrees different from the city to the suburbs. You often see Harvey Leonard will say, low tonight Boston will be 35 degrees, but it'll be some low 20s in some of the cold spots. High tomorrow near 50. Why? Is it during the day the air is well mixed and it's more uniform? At night you can get large changes between urban and rural area. Edward Long, a NASA scientist, did a study of the linear 11-year average rural and urban temperatures. And look at in blue, the rural, it shows some cyclical behavior, but not a lot of warming, but the urban areas had a significant warming. And Tom Carl had written a paper in 1986. He was a good guy then, and in 1988 he included that adjustment in his first version. He said trends of surface temperatures from urban station data are likely to have a serious warm bias, maybe 3.4 degrees Celsius a century. That's 6 degrees Fahrenheit. He said the rate may have increased after the 1950s, commensurate with large recent growth around airports. Urban growth is serious and must be taken into account. Inexplicably, the adjustment was removed in version 2. But here's an example of airport. They got the tarmac, but they can also have jet exhaust. The thermometers are at the end of the runway, and you think that it doesn't affect the temperature. Well, this is what happened when they, in 2007-8, they made a change to remove the urban heat island because this was an inconvenient data set. It was showing cyclical behavior when they wanted to show, rising temperatures. So they said, well, let's take out the urban heat island adjustment. And so suddenly 1998 became warmer than 1934. If you look at the measured in blue, we see that cyclical behavior. But after the adjustments, we get the rising trend, the more steady rise fitting the model. This is Maine. I think for Hal, I gave a presentation a few years back. This is done through 2011, Maine temperatures. 1913 stands up at 46 degrees. It's pretty flat. There's up and downs. There's cold periods in the 60s and 70s and warmer later. But the trend was minus 0.01 degree per decade or 0.1 degree Fahrenheit per century. Not significant, right? So 2 years later, I went back and looked at that new data set based on the new version of the algorithms for Maine. And now 1913 was cooled by 5 degrees. The trend was 2.3 degrees per decade warming. And the Portland Press Herald did a press story saying Maine is warming faster than any other state, 2.3 degrees per century. Well, 2 years ago, it wasn't warming at all. What happened? Instead of adjusting models to fit the data, they do frequently. They adjust the data to fit their models. And they take temperatures where they shouldn't, one next to the building, the thermometer there, over a Weber grill. I guess if you barbecue, you can have warm temperatures, may set a record for that day. You have one here next to an air conditioner on a road in Tucson, in waste treatment plants. Infrared shows as a local source of heat. And the government accounting office took note of tasks, says you don't track stations whether they adhere to siting standards. And they found that 42% of the network failed to meet the siting standards. And only 2% of the stations had a complete data set from beginning to end. Globally, we had data that wasn't gathered and wasn't produced into a view every month of where we are with our temperatures until the early 90s. But the data sites increased from the 1900 to 1976, and then they dropped off. 4,500 stations disappeared. 75% of the data disappeared. And when you look at the drop in temperatures and you average all of the stations, what do you see? You see a sudden rise. That doesn't mean that, it means only that they eliminate more of the rural areas, the high latitude areas, and the mountain areas. And so there's shenanigans in that too. And by the way, for the stations that did report, the number of missing months was 90% in South America. And of the years, 90% of the years in South America and Africa had missing months. And the bottom right is a plot of temperatures for a station in Russia. All the red months are missing data. It's up to 5 months of the data is missing. How do you compute an average for a year when you're missing 5 months? Well, they go searching around. It's 750 miles away at a station. Well, we'll use that anomaly and plug it in here. It's like trying to guess who won the game between Boston and the Yankees if you only know what happened in the 3rd, 4th, and 7th inning. Globally, look at this is 2018. This is not like it's 40 years ago when we didn't have much data. Look at the map on the top left. Top left, yes.
Yeah, top left.
All the gray is missing data. But what they show the world is what's on the bottom right. And look, no data in Africa and the Middle East, but it's the record hottest month there. The globe is 71% oceans. There's major questions as to how to account. Willie can tell you, changing coverage and measurements. They went from buckets off of ships and ship intake, where it comes in, the water's to cool the engines, and therefore it might be heated by the engine, to moored and drifted buoys that took data from satellite, and now they have the buoys, the Argo buoys, the floats that are designed to measure accurately the temperatures, to dive and to 2,000 meters and get the ocean heat content and get us good data finally for the oceans. But what happened after 2 or 3 years? Well, they were showing cooling. That's not allowed. They stopped for a while and they found a way to make adjustments so it wasn't cooling anymore. You can see every version of the data is progressively colder in the past. It keeps even more of a hockey stick. And Hadley Center is just as bad. Antarctica was cooling, inconvenient. So on the next analysis, Antarctica's been warming. It's not like we found new stations or much new data. The UN took a poll in 2015 of all countries, 10 million people, who asked what was important to them. Good education, better health, better jobs, affordable, nutritious food, support for people, access to clean water and sanitation, all of them important. Climate change is the bottom of the list. That's when they went to climate disruption. That's when they started talking about extreme heat. Oh, the United States is getting record heat, and we need to do something about it now. Well, this is the state record highs, all-time record highs. 23 of them, of the 50 states, occurred in the 1930s. 38 before 1960. Since the 1940s, it's been more state record lows than highs. In terms of the number of 90 degrees, top left, the number of 100 and 105 degree temperatures in all the stations, the downtrend is down. The heat wave index that the EPA produces, it showed a peak in the 1930s and hasn't been close since. So where's the heat? The number of record highs is not increasing. The top 10 years with the most records occurred before the 1955. So what do? They finesse the issue by creating a ratio of record highs to record lows. Some record lows and record highs are both dropping, but record lows are dropping faster than record highs because of the urban heat island effect. So look at the red bars at the top. See, the heat's getting worse. No, it's getting, the highs and lows are getting closer. Climate is better. That's right, for people and for crops. The number of tornadoes has gone down, not up. We get spikes during La Niñas, but the last 7 years. 18 wasn't included. And by the way, 18, we had the first year we ever had no EF4 or 5, the strong tornadoes. First year ever. Hurricanes, we had a couple of bad ones in 17 and 18. But this is the ACE index, accumulated cyclone energy index. We've had a lot of bad years in the past. We had bad year in 2004 and 5, and bad year in 2017 and 18. But the other years made the list. And a lot of those other years, we didn't have satellite, like 1933 or 26. And so we didn't know what was going on in the Eastern Ocean. Now we just pick up these one-day wonders in the Eastern Ocean, and they accumulate there. The number of landfalling hurricanes, this has been the quietest decade. 1 year to go, we don't know where we'll end, but not likely to get more hurricanes, but we're only in the 1860s had fewer major hurricanes making landfall. Areas very wet, flood, or very dry. There's a lot of variability year to year, but there's no trend. Even NOAA said so. Incidents in wildfires used to be a lot greater, and they've declined. But there are some bad fires in recent years, for sure. There are fewer fires, more areas have been damaged, but that's because the environmentalists have been preventing. They hate farmers. They hate foresters. They don't want you to go into the forest because you might disturb the wildlife that we care about. They want to take the water melts from the Sierra Mountain snows and put it in the river for the fish, not to get it to the farmers. And because they don't let them in the forest, this year we're getting a lot of rain and snow in California, right? So there'll be a lot of growth in the spring when it starts warming up. But then the dry season comes, and that shrills up. And it becomes tinder for when the winds start, the Santa Ana winds, the El Diablo winds blow. Almost every year, late summer and fall, there'll be episodes like that. And people want to live in the woods. They're even escaping the city. They go live up in, this is really nice in the foothills. But they're asking for trouble. They put power lines to get the power to them. What happens? The wind blows, and power lines fall on the trees, start the fire, and then carries great distances, and this is a global thing. Then they said snow is disappearing. Ski industry's dead. Across the hemisphere, the last 5 years have been the top 10 year for snow in the fall, and in the winter we've seen increasing snow. It's decreased in the spring because they made a change in how they observe snow. In 2000, they took the man out of the equation. They made it automated, so it's just the reflectivity, the albedo, the brightness. So the man used to be able to toggle back on the satellite picture because clouds will move and snow doesn't move. Okay, so he would say, oh, well, the snow is really over here. And you had a lot of spruce forests, evergreen forests. And the snow covers them in the winter and then falls off and it looks darker. And if you set your threshold right, suddenly you say, no, there's no snow there. No, there may be 12 inches of snow underneath the trees. And so they said, don't use the data after 2000 to compare it to the data before 2000. Because we change our methodology. But they do, and they say snow is disappearing. The snow is disappearing sooner. We've had 29 major impact snowstorms. Willie talked about 4 last year, there were actually 5. And no other decade had more than 10. There's a 10-year running mean of snow in Boston. This is a lean year. We don't know where we'll end, but it'll probably be below normal. But the last 10 years had more snow in Boston than any other 10-year period going back into the 1870s. Arctic ice, coming close, it floats. They say, well, the Arctic ice will melt, it will flood the world. No. Maybe the Antarctic ice would, but the Arctic ice is floating. It's like ice in your iced tea. When it melts, it doesn't flow over the top, right? But what happens is that it's open to water from the Atlantic and Pacific. And even the Snow and Ice Data Center said in 2007 that, warm water's coming in from the Atlantic, contributing to summer ice melt and reducing winter ice growth, and from the Pacific, according to the Japanese, to the Bering Strait. And we can see it here. Look at the bottom. This is from the International Arctic Research Center. The bottom is ice in the Kara Sea. The middle one is water temperatures, and the top box is air temperatures in the Arctic. And you'll notice in the 1930s and 40s, the water was warm. In the 50s, the Arctic air was warm. The ice was below the bottom. When it got cold, there's more ice. It got warm again, the ice diminished. As Willie showed, I'll show that in a second, as we look at the Atlantic and Pacific temperatures compared to the Arctic, it fits it very nicely. And as you look at the solar, this is Willie's slide, I think, versus the Arctic surface-wide temperature anomalies, it matches it. And by the way, when you put them together, the sun and the oceans, and superimpose them on the U.S. temperatures before they made the adjustments, it fits it to a T. So in other words, the sun drives the oceans and the earth temperature, the ocean temperatures and the land temperatures. And don't worry about these guys. They're setting it. Now, last 2 minutes, I wanted to talk a little bit about electricity. You know, we pay the highest cost for electricity, the prices for electricity in the country because of Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. Rhode Island's #1, Massachusetts #2, Connecticut, New Hampshire, we joined California, a great company, Vermont, New York, and Virginia is running really hard to join the top 10. This hurts people. We don't notice it now. Why? Because gasoline prices are so low. We've saved, I estimate about, if you have 3 cars, large family, you save maybe $300 a month. $240, $300 a month. So you don't notice that the electricity prices are $50 or $100 more. But look at the rest of the world, where they've gone crazy down the Ocasio path toward renewables, wind and solar. They're paying 3 times what we pay here, and 6 times what they pay in states where they don't go crazy with the carbon taxes. Over 20% of UK households are in energy poverty. And I've talked to them, and they say the elderly are choosing between heating and eating when it's cold. Because their electricity prices are so high, the thermostat's set at 50, they sleep with their sweater and coat on, they eat dog food. It's a sad story. And that's where we're going if we don't smarten up. We can't let them go down this path because wind and solar are unreliable. There are blackouts and brownouts. When it happens in South Australia, well, it's okay, you know, they're not going to freeze to death. But it happens in Boston, you know. UK death toll, it's higher in the 4 coldest months than the 8 warmest months. There's a number of daily deaths. They found globally 20 times more people die from cold, looking at 74 million deaths in 13 countries, including Thailand and Brazil. It didn't matter whether you're kind of cold or semi-tropical or really cold countries. There were more deaths in the winter. In the United States, it's the same story. Now, Dwight Eisenhower, in his farewell address, remembered for the military-industrial complex, also said, worried about, because of a government contract, huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity, that the prospects of the domination of the nation's scholar by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and gravely to be regarded. Boy, was that right. The head of the NOAA for a while, president also of the AAAS, said urgent and unprecedented environmental and social change challenges scientists to define a new social contract, to commit all of their energies and talents to the most pressing problems in proportion to their importance. We decide what's pressing and what's important in exchange for public funding, and that's where the $1.5 trillion globally is coming. And the real motivations, in their own words, in searching for a new enemy to unite us, the globalization theme here at the Global Club of Rome said, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming would fit the bill. It doesn't matter if this common enemy is real or invented for the purpose. Timothy Worth, the U.S. Senator. We've got to drive the global warming issue, even if it's wrong, because we're doing the right thing in terms of economic and environmental policy. Christine Stewart in Canada. No matter if the science of global warming is all phony, climate change is the greatest opportunity to bring about justice and equality in the world. UN climate chief said, our aim is not to save the world from ecological calamity, but to change the global economic system, basically destroy capitalism. The lead author of the UN IPCC report, Edenhofer, said, one has to free oneself from the illusion that international climate policy is an environmental policy. Instead, it's about how we redistribute the world's wealth. And then the EP administrator, Gene McCarthy, says, the great thing about the EPA power plant proposal is an investment opportunity. It's not about pollution control. One of Willie's favorite, Michael Crichton, said historically, most people say, well, I'm going to go with the 97%. The consensus is that you guys are wrong. You can throw as much data as you want at me. I'm not going to believe you because they got 97% of your brethren who don't agree with you. Well, he said that historically the claim of consensus has been a refuge of scoundrels. It's the way to avoid debate by claiming that the matter is already settled. But people say, well, he was a science fiction guy. Why should we believe him? Well, now we can understand what your side of the argument is. Michael wrote State of Fear. I think it was, his roommate was Richard Linson, I think, at that point. He continued, when you hear the word consensus, when they agree on something or another, reach for your wallet because you've been had. The work of science has nothing to do with consensus. Consensus is the business of politics. You have 50%, 51%, you can vote for something, but we don't vote in science. It's all about reproducible results. The greatest scientists in history were great because they broke with the consensus, like Galileo, and Newton, and Einstein. There's no such thing as consensus science. If it's consensus, it's not science. If it's science, it's not consensus, period. And his roommate will end with his quote, future generations will wonder and bemused amazement that the early 21st century developed world went into hysterical panic on the basis of gross exaggerations and highly uncertain computer projections proceeded to contemplate a rollback of the industrial age. And thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes our press conference. I do want to thank Professor Soon and Joseph D. Leo for coming. Also, I want to thank the Boston Broadside. Ted Tripp was here. And WSMN Nashua AM Radio, Diana Plasho, every Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m. I want to point out, too, that the corporate media was informed of this press conference. We sent out a batch of emails, we made phone calls, and we also made hand-delivered press releases upstairs on the 4th floor Thursday. And I went up there just as this conference was going on. You see, they didn't show up. So that demonstrates that they have a vested interest in keeping this information from their readership and from the general public. But we're not going to let them do that, because we're going to take videos like this, some of you watching this on the internet, and we're going to share it. We're going to share it with our elected officials. We're going to share it with our neighbors, our friends, our teachers, our professors, etc. And there's something called critical mass. And Joe made up that little chart you had, people around the world, what's the most pressing issues. Climate change was sort of on the bottom. And it's that's not a problem with Charlie Baker. He thinks it's on the top. Mayor Walsh, the city council, and other elected officials around the country. But when more and more people understand what's going on, they're going to, just like all politicians, they will, the wet finger test. Maybe that's when they'll start showing up at these press conferences and giving us awards. So that's why it's important to share this information. And I thank you. And for more information about Camp Constitution, visit us on our website, campconstitution.net, our Facebook page, and our YouTube channel, where we'll be posting this very shortly. Thank you, and God bless you.